So helping students overcome fear of public speaking can be a daunting task because everybody looks at it a little bit differently. I get really wound up, and I'm very transparent about this in my class. I get pretty anxious in public speaking situations, which sounds kind of funny and ironic, but I share that with my students, and I'm like, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you have to figure out how to make it work for you. So we talk a lot about that. We also talk about it in really practical terms. So I have this bizarre fear of frogs, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And frogs are not going to jump up and attack me or like, you know, they're probably terrified of me because I'm like this giant, right? But I still am really afraid of frogs. And even though it doesn't make sense to a lot of people because they're like, it's just a frog, it's not going to hurt you, I have my students walk me through how they might help me overcome that fear. So we talk about, you know, they'll suggest things like, well, you could look at a picture of a frog, and that's like a good starting point in building up to maybe where I'm actually touching, just thinking of it as like touching a frog or holding a frog in my hand. But they walk me through the process. And then we talk about how public speaking is very similar to that. You don't just, you know, get thrown off the high dive. We're going to dip your toe in the water first and kind of get you used to it. I talk about it too in terms of the lab sciences have the lecture component where they're learning ideas in the classroom, but then they have this lab situation where they kind of get to try things out, apply what they're learning, and kind of play around with the concepts. So it's a safe place to fail. So it's kind of like their public speaking lab where they can just you know, be in the presence of other people who are empathetic because they have to do the same thing. And we talk about changing their mindset as well. Thinking, oh, well, you're looking at me right now and you're not saying anything because I'm talking and you're a polite listener. So, you know, the audience is doing the same thing. They're not staring at you and judging you. They're quietly listening because you're in front of the class speaking. I mean, that's what a good audience does. So just kind of changing their mindset and looking at it as something that you can overcome and something that also something that they need to overcome, because I want them to be more confident or learn confidence, or at least learning to portray confidence. I want them to learn that in my classroom instead of being at an interview for their dream job and then all of a sudden they're, you know, just a hot mess and they don't know how to manage that. There are so many good examples. We talk, one of the first speeches that the public speaking students do is they recite little bits of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. And we talk about what an incredible communicator he is. We watch a video of him giving that presentation, and it's just so powerful. The language is amazing. But I'm going to go a little bit off of the beaten path here and say someone named Vanessa Van Edwards. And she has tons of YouTube videos and TED Talks that are just really intriguing. But she calls herself a recovering boring person. And she's very like relevant, dynamic, just super fun to like watch. And she's got lots of good tips for, so not only is she a great communicator, but she talks about becoming a great communicator. So it's like a double whammy for someone who's a complete nerd like me. But she talks about how we use our faces when we're genuinely happy, like things that happen, and how to interact one-on-one with people better. And there's a lot of like interpersonal stuff that she talks about that anybody can take a lot away from. So she's probably one of my favorite, more like modern contemporary people. And she's just really fun to watch, and she's quite funny. She's got a huge personality. So Vanessa Van Edwards. And she's got a website called thescienceofpeople.org, I think. But she's the founder of this group called The Science of People, and they do a lot of research and stuff. So it's really interesting. So she's probably one of my favorites.